America first.
We actually had signs of a recovery in 2010, if you remember. 2010 was kind of a good year for the world economy.
We've had quite a lot of experience with populism and protectionism in recent decades, but it's been experience in the developing world largely, and it's been experience that you've had personally, both you were born in Egypt and then you had to leave Egypt. And give me your sense of how you see the merits and the dangers of those kind of policies.
Well, I mean, as you say, Egypt had a very populist phase after the revolution and experimented with high tariffs, nationalization. My own family was nationalized and lost all of their property in Egypt. And, I personally experienced massive downward social mobility as a result of that. And, we went from being very well off to having very little.
I mean, that's not an experience that most people who talk about this have had. Does that change the way you view the distribution of wealth, the way you view inequality, the way you view opportunity and education?
Well, I mean, I think it makes me very sensitive to how very well-intentioned but very misguided policies can go terribly wrong. And it also makes me feel very passionately about education. So when I was growing up, my father used to say to me, they can take everything away from you, but they can't take away your brain. And he was completely obsessed with us getting an education. It was our ticket out to survival. He had done a PhD, we started from scratch again. If he had not had that education, we would have never gotten anywhere.
My concern about saying education is the answer, that it's like motherhood and apple pie, of course education is a good idea. But what kind of education, how do you need to change education to really help those people who are now being left behind?
Well, it's interesting. Education is actually one of the most important drivers of the inequality that we're observing in some countries. And so clearly restoring opportunities in education for a broad swathe of society is an important part of the solution.
Clearly, if you're in a world where you change careers 2, 3, 4, 5 times, the idea that your education stops at either high school or university seems crazy. But right now, it seems that the sort of embryonic system of lifetime learning that's emerging is one that is reinforcing inequalities rather than countering them. Because the people who are able to avail themselves of new retraining tend to be people with higher incomes.
Absolutely. Everybody always points to the German success with vocational training as a model. But having more opportunities.
Is that really a success? Because that's built for going into an industry as an apprentice and staying in it. I'm not sure that even is very appropriate for a world where you're going to have a completely different profession in different decades of your life.
Well, it's been successful at sustaining a highly skilled industrial workforce, which is the case. What it hasn't done is been successful at retooling industrial workers or other kinds of workers. But I think it provides the potential model that would then have to be modified for older workers.
The sense I think we have at the moment is of a backlash not just against the elite, but a backlash against experts. You are the quintessential expert. You've been an expert at the World Bank, you've been a civil servant in the UK, you're now a central banker, you're going to become an academic. Is that backlash against the experts justified?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, I think we shouldn't forget what the experts gave us. I often think of the Monty Python skit about, what did the Romans ever do for us? And, what did the experts ever do for us?
Roads.
Well, they gave us roads and sanitation.
We could do the whole skit.
Exactly. So, we have to remember the huge gains that we've made in terms of income, life expectancy, wealth, and so on, came from the culmination of human knowledge that was driven by experts. Having said that, I think some experts have oversold what they can do. And I think a degree of modesty and humility about what we know and what we don't know is necessary.
Is there a danger that this is just a huge echo chamber, a whole load of experts talking to each other, but nothing more?
Yeah. Well, there is a real risk of that. Where we make progress is where there's a real, genuine conflict of ideas and there's genuine debate and knowledge moves forward.
One manifestation of this bubble mentality is, I think, the way people talk to each other. People talk about the importance of opportunity and inclusive capitalism and all of that, but it's like-minded people talking to each other. And I think part of the problem is that those outside the bubble, we're talking different languages.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we did some interesting work at the Bank of England recently looking at Dr. Seuss and the simplicity of the language in Dr. Seuss. We looked at our own publications and found that, we assumed a reading level that was, very close to university level when we say we're trying to reach the wider public. Because if we genuinely want to communicate, we need to make sure it's in language that is available to others.
The interesting thing is that the people who have been able to communicate most clearly right now are actually the populists. Donald Trump is a brilliant communicator. So perhaps the Bank of England should be, learning from Dr. Seuss and Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, I think it's a huge challenge. I think we've all got to get better at communicating. Now, having said that, I don't want to imply that, it's just about communication, because it is also about the need for policy change. But you're not going to get support for policy change until you're able to communicate clearly.
Minouche, thank you very much indeed.